Hi, Mike. Welcome to Miracles Happen.
Hey, how are you? It's so nice to be here.
Thanks so much for taking the time to meet up with me today. I'm so excited to pick your brain.
It's absolutely my pleasure, and feel free to pick away.
Great. Great. Thanks for making yourself available. So, we are going to be talking today about herbalism, but I wanted to at first ask you like who you are and what do you do, and give us a little mini bio, if you will.
So when you say, who am I? I've been asking my therapist that for 20 years. No, sorry, sorry. I can get carried away. I'm Mike Berkley. I'm a licensed and board certified acupuncturist, and I'm board certified in Chinese herbal medicine. And I have a practice in New York City, an acupuncture and herbal medicine practice. I've been in practice for 23 years. And for 22 of those 23 years, I've been treating nothing but fertility cases. And I'm the first acupuncturist in all of the United States to devote a practice entirely to the treatment of those faced with fertility challenges. And I took the dive I committed so fully that I even named my business the Berkley Center for Reproductive Wellness. So there's no, I say that because it's important for the listeners to know that I wanted people to know that I'm not the guy to come to for neck and back pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guy to come to for fertility issues. So I committed very strongly to that. And that's what I've been doing for 22 years. And I love it. It's both wonderful and rewarding, as well as difficult and frustrating. And, the reason for that is because I have successful cases and I have unsuccessful cases.
Sure.
And so, the unsuccessful cases are, they're painful for everybody.
They sure are. Yeah, and if you claimed that every single case was a a home run, then obviously there would be some question
Right.
about that. But yeah, it's clear to me how passionate you are about what you do.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah. How did you come to 22 years ago? How did you come to specialize?
It's actually longer than 23 years ago because I was in school I was in acupuncture school for 4 years.
Mhm.
And then I went back for 2 years to study herbs. So I was actually in school for 6 years. So before I got involved in any of this, I owned a computer business and I sold computers. Um,
Wow.
and and simultaneously and quite seriously, I was training in martial arts. And my martial arts teacher is American, he's Italian American, but it just so happens that he was and he is an acupuncturist. And so I had studied with him for about 15 years. 10 of those years were private classes. And after 10 years of privates with him, one day he said to me, I've spent 15 years teaching you how to hurt people. You should learn how to help people.
Mm.
And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, acupuncture is really efficacious and it's good and the herbs are very effective and they're good and you should think about it. And I totally thought it was all bogus. I had no interest in it. It was just totally nonsensical. And then that's part one of the story.
Mhm.
Part two of the story is we have a newspaper out here that is no longer extant, but it was called The Village Voice. And it was a very famous, popular New York City newspaper that, had articles in it. It was kind of politically left-leaning. It had a lot of advertisements for what music was around and stuff like that. I'm not putting down the newspaper. It's just that I didn't read that particular newspaper. So one day I happened to come into my computer office, my computer business office, and what's on my desk but the Village Voice. So somebody must have come in when I wasn't there and they were speaking to my partner and they left the paper there. And I was browsing through it to see about music for the weekend, and I see this quarter-page ad that says Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. We've been in San Diego for 18 years. We're pleased to announce that we're opening a branch in Manhattan. You're invited to an open house on September 8th. I'm making the date up. And I would have never gone. But when I saw the ad, I said, Tom was just telling me I should explore acupuncture.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, let me go check it out. And here with these people that, are not too smart and, not too up on things have to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I forced myself to go, and I'll cut to the chase and say that I got tingling down my spine. I was very excited. I was very stimulated, very motivated. The people that spoke were articulate, intelligent, bright, experienced people. Some of them were medical doctors who were acupuncturists. Some of them were acupuncturists who were not medical doctors, but they were all highly intelligent and as I say, articulate. And I became very enamored of this. And I decided I was going to take one class to check it out. And I left about 6 years later.
Yeah.
And then to talk about the fertility piece.
Yes.
So my wife had a little bit of a difficult time conceiving, or I should say we had a difficult time conceiving. And she had gone to see a woman here in New York who did some acupuncture and gave her herbs and stuff. And then, we did what we had to do. And my 25-year-old son is walking around the house right now.
I can see his reflection in the.
Yeah, you can see his reflection. He's walking around out here.
Okay.
We have a new dog, so he's taking care of the doggy.
Oh, we love dogs around here. Yep.
But we just got our first dog. And so when I saw that it was effective,
okay,
I was very motivated. So let me back up for a second. What I didn't want to do was spend my entire professional life treating neck and back pain.
Yep.
Not that that's not important. Any alleviation of pain is doing a wonderful thing for another human being, but essentially it becomes boring. Yeah. Because, why do you get back pain? Well, for, several different reasons. I'm not a back pain expert, but it doesn't take a genius to fix somebody's back. But to treat fertility cases, you have to know a lot. And to treat them well, you have to know a lot of Western medicine, and in my case, Chinese medicine. And the other beautiful part is that I don't know all I want to know. I don't know all I should know, and I never will, which I also love.
Yes.
Because if you never will, then you're continuously motivated to constantly grasp that which will outdistance your reach. Mm-hmm. And so it's very fascinating, this field. And in addition to that, I help, to start families, which is incredibly rewarding.
Oh my gosh, right? I don't know that it gets more rewarding than that.
Yeah, it's really good.
Well, I just want to read something quickly from your site, because this is what is really what drew me into wanting to interview you. So the headline is "Where East Meets West." And the reason why I'm so fascinated by this is because in the Western fertility world, when I was going through fertility stuff, it's probably different now, or I hope it's different now. It really was, you're either West or you're East, and there's no meeting in between. So you write, "We are world renowned for treating reproductive disorders by integrating Eastern medicine with your Western reproductive medical protocol. Hallelujah."
Thank you.
We have seen through 23 years of clinical experience that by including acupuncture, herbal medicine, and Chinese medicine for infertility has significantly improved. I freaking love that. Yes.
Thank you very much. You're very kind.
I love that so much because as I said, I guess I wasn't recording at the time, but I developed a whole, Chinese herbal medicine protocol during my fertility issues. And I had what I felt to have very little guidance from my acupuncturist, zero guidance, even like danger signals from my Western doc. And so I am really interested. I know there's these 3 components that you work with, but I'm really interested in homing in on the herbalist stuff.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, and I know it's difficult because they all go together, but if we're able to, fine tune and talk about the herbal stuff a little bit more today, that'd be awesome. Yeah. So can you can you tell us how the herbs and herbal medicine is different than acupuncture and its function on the body and just how it works within this system
Sure.
you have?
Just give me 1 second. Noah, can you do me a big favor and just get me a glass of water? Thanks. Um, so acupuncture is, as I'm assuming everyone knows, the insertion of acupuncture needles. They're stainless steel needles on certain points along the body, and acupuncture stimulates various events to take place in the body. Acupuncture doesn't have anything on the needles. There's no medicine in the needles. They're simply just plain old stainless steel needles. And herbal medicine is actually, in fact, medicine. It's something that you drink. And like Western medicine, it has an effect on internal, mechanisms that can, thank you very much, that can improve, uh, it can improve areas in which people are deficient, and it can detract where people have excess pathogenic factors. So to explain it just very simply, and I don't get involved in this at all, and I know nothing about it, but if people have a bad cold or a flu, they have probably an invasion of external pathogenic influences, meaning virus or bacteria. And so one way to fight that, well, there are a couple of ways to fight that. One way is to support the person's immune function. So you can do that with herbs. And then the other thing that you can do is to cause the patient to sweat profusely every night so the pores are open and these pathogenic factors will be emitted. In the old days, meaning 50 years ago, 100 years ago, people would say, listen, when you have a bad cold, drink some scotch or some whiskey and put on some pajamas and a t-shirt and a robe. And when you start to sweat, when you break a sweat, your cold will start to get better very quickly, much faster than if that will happen much quicker than if you didn't facilitate that type of activity. And so instead of drinking alcohol with the robe and the shirt and the pajamas, you can give somebody herbs to do that. So let's talk about a little bit about herbs, and then we can talk about, if this is okay with you, and then we'll talk a little bit about how herbs can affect fertility. So a couple of things I want to talk about herbs. I want to say about herbs. So first of all, this is important for the listeners to be aware of. That's why I want to start here first.
Yes.
There are different ways to take herbs. So you can get a bottle of pills. The pills are very tiny little black pills. That's one way. You can take a tincture, which is it's a liquid, and there's some alcohol in it that helps it to dissolve, I guess. I never use it, but you take them in your mouth with an eyedropper. And then there's granules, which look like powder that you're going to use for hot chocolate. And you would take 3 spoons. They're little they're little tiny white spoons. I think they hold 3 grams per spoon. And you put 3 of them in your coffee cup and pour boiling water, and you take it 3 times a day. And then there's raw herbs, which looks like herbs. It looks like, rocks and twigs and lettuce. Of course, it's not lettuce or rocks or twigs, but it looks like that.
The dried.
Yeah, it's just dried products, right? And
they taste and smell terrible.
Right, exactly. And so I want to talk a little bit about the least effective mechanism of taking herbs, or the least effective way of taking herbs, to the most effective way. And this is really important for people to know. So the least effective way is taking the pills. Why is that? Because when I give somebody when I write a prescription for an herbal formula, the patient is literally taking 80 to maybe 150 grams of herbs per day. 80 to 150 grams of herbs per day. When you take those pills, maybe you're taking 15 to 25, maybe I'm going to be very generous and liberal, maybe you're taking 30 grams of herbs a day. That's number one, but that's not even the worst part. The worst part is there a pill for infertility? Well, we know there's no such thing as really as infertility. I mean, what does infertility mean? It means I'm having a problem having a baby, or I can't have a baby. That's what infertility means. What does cancer mean? Does cancer just mean cancer? No, there are hundreds of kinds of cancers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Many different kinds of cancers. You don't treat every cancer with the same type of intervention.
Right.
So when the true way, a true herbalist, if you went to China or even here and you met a true herbalist, what's the difference between the pills and the raw herbs? Well, the raw herbs are custom designed for you and only you. So let's talk about Nancy, who's sitting over there in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So Nancy is 5'4", and she weighs 120 pounds, and she's a polycystic ovarian syndrome patient, and she's having a difficult time getting pregnant, and she chronically miscarries when she does get pregnant. Now let's talk to Janelle. She's over there. She's 5'4". She has PCOS, and she weighs 250 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
They're the exact same age, the exact same height. They have the exact same pathology, but one of them is 120 pounds and one of them is 250 pounds. They must both be treated with different herbs. Now let's even refine it more. In addition to infertility, Nancy suffers with chronic migraines of at least 1 to 2 migraines per week, whereas Janelle never has a headache. So Nancy's going to not only need herbs to help improve the egg quality and try to help her to ovulate and menstruate regularly, but she's also going to need herbs to help mitigate the headaches.
Yes.
You can't do that with pills. Why not? Because a pill is a pill is a pill. Let me show you something. Do you see these eyeglasses?
Yes.
They're black. Well, I can't go like this and make them red, and I can't go like that and change the frame. These eyeglasses are analogous to the pills. The glasses are the glasses. The pills are the pills. When you use raw herbs, that's when the art of the medicine is manifested. Because now I have to sit down and say, she's 250 pounds, but she's blood deficient. Why is she blood deficient? Because when she menstruates, I'm just making this up, obviously, but it's representative of reality. When she menstruates, she only literally bleeds for 3 hours, and that's her entire menses. Mm-hmm. So that's obviously in Chinese medicine, well, in case there are Chinese medicine practitioners, I can get in trouble if I don't say it exactly right. So part of the diagnosis may be blood deficiency. Mm-hmm. But there are herbs that nurture and nourish and tonify the blood. But certain of those herbs are called cloying, C-L-O-Y-I-N-G. Cloying means sticky, unctuous, thick, rich. And what do? They can give you diarrhea. They can give you loose stool. They can give you stomach aches. Who shouldn't take these herbs? Somebody who's very overweight. But yet, Janelle is very overweight, but she needs this particular herb. But I don't want to give her the herb because it's going to make her sick. No problem. No problem. Do you know why? Because there are other herbs that I can put in the formula that will counteract and reduce the cloying nature of this herb while maintaining the efficacious aspect of the herb. So Janelle, in fact, can take this herb as long as she takes these other herbs with that herb. Wow. So this is when an herbalist has to be good at what he or she does. Let's continue. So the next least effective way to take herbs is the tinctures, and then the next least effective way is to take the granules. Maybe it's reversed. Maybe the granules are perhaps better than the tinctures because, in fact, in granules you can mix in different herbs, but it's limited. And now I'm going to tell you why it's limited. So let's say with granules you can mix in different herbs. I'll use 9 grams of dongwei, 15 grams of shu di wang, 9 grams of xiangfu, and 6 grams of danshen. So that's the formula. But if I want to take xiangfu, which is an herb that moves the qi, so what does that mean? It means somebody's always pent up and they're angry and they're depressed and they're bitter and they get headaches all the time and they're tense. Their qi means energy, is stuck and obstructed and constricted. So you want to give them herbs that will essentially or actually even make them cry. Just like let them emote. But I want that herb xiangfu. That's the function of xiangfu. That's Xiang, and the next word is Fu, xiangfu. But if I fry the way you say it in Chinese is su, si-yu, su chao xiang fu. It means to fry xiang fu in vinegar. It makes it even more potent. It
Wow.
makes it even more efficacious. You cannot do that with granules. So the end of the story is that if a patient wants the best Chinese medicine treatment, they must go to a practitioner who knows how to write, how to compose an herbal formula. And I'm going to tell you one thing that's unfortunate and is a shame, which is that, pardon me, just a quick sec. Sorry. One thing that's a shame, it's a bad thing. This is not obviously the case with every herbalist, but you actually have two kinds of herbalists. One of them is just somebody who says, I'm an herbalist, and they studied on their own, and they distribute herbs. There's no law against it because herbs are considered a food product. So any imbecile can just disseminate herbs. Mm-hmm. The part of this that's a shame is that you actually have some, not all, some board-certified herbalists that will give a patient pills constantly, and they don't know how to write a formula. Now, this is not the case, I will say this again, it is not the case with all herbalists. You have brilliant, fantastic herbalists out there, brilliant, fantastic acupuncturists. There are many smart people in this field, and many who are not smart, just like in any field.
Sure.
But for the people listening, if you're going to take herbs, go to somebody that can literally write on a piece of paper, a prescription that is specific for you.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's kind of a little bit of a precursor lesson on herbs. And so herbs can do a lot of things. Let's give you just, maybe 3 examples. So let's talk about an endometriosis patient. Mm-hmm. So I'm never going to get well, it's not exactly true. If a patient comes to me and she says she has endometriosis, what she's really saying is I had endometriosis. Because when she says I have endometriosis, that's not really possible. Because if she knows she has it, she would have been diagnosed via a laparoscopy, most probably, unless it was what's called an endometrioma, which is a big cyst on the ovary and can be seen through ultrasound. But let's say that's not the case. And she says she has the most unbearable pelvic pain during her men's season, during her ovulation. So she goes to her doctor. She gets a diagnostic laparoscopy. The doctor says she's got stage 4 endometriosis. The doctor's going to go in there and resect the endometriosis right away. Right away. By the way, this patient is 32 years old and in perfect health, normal weight, everything is good. So she gets the endometriosis resected. Oh, and one more important thing. There is no tubal damage at all. The tubes are fine. They're patent. They're great. So she gets the laparoscopy. All the endometriosis has been eradicated, excised. Sperm is fine. Everything is good. Can't get pregnant.
No.
Can't get pregnant. She goes to the doctor. The doctor says, I don't know. Tubes are good. Sperm is good. You're only 30 years old. You had endometriosis, but you don't have it anymore. Let's try an IVF. But my question is, why would you try an IVF? Do you ovulate? Yes. You have a 28-day cycle? No, I have a 30-day cycle, but it's consistently 30 days. Okay, fine, perfectly normal. Sperm is good. Your lining is good. You have no other diseases? No immunological mitigators? Mm-hmm. Okay, no problem. I think I know what it is. So everybody that's listening right now, including doctors, mm-hmm. they're going to say, who the hell is this guy? And how does he say, I think I know what it is?
You're talking, this is my case, by the way.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's great. It's a perfect case then, right?
Yes.
So here's what it is. So as you know, and many of the listeners do know, some of the listeners don't know. So I'll speak to those who don't know.
Mm-hmm.
When a woman has endometriosis, the endometriotic tissue, the adhesions, are discolored.
Oh,
They
yeah.
are called powder burn, which means they're kind of blackish. Some of these spots are reddish. Some of them are purplish. Sometimes it's a little gray. Sometimes, for example, you can see very dense adhesions. So the fallopian tubes may be adhesed to the ovaries or something like that. So you can see these adhesions.
Yep.
But when the doctor does the laparoscopy, all of this is gone. So why isn't the woman getting pregnant? So this is why. She's not getting pregnant probably because some endometriosis tissue looks exactly like normal tissue.
Ah.
So when the laparoscopic surgeon is in the pelvis or anywhere else in the body where the endometriosis is, he or she will resect what's obvious. They cannot resect what they do not see.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just leave it there for a minute. So patient, I understand the history of the patient because the patient told me her history. So I'm saying to myself, okay, what is endometriosis besides ectopic endometrial cells or endometrial tissue? What is it beyond the physical aspect? So what it is it's number one, it's an autoimmune disorder. And number two, what's known as a pro-inflammatory cytokine disorder, which means essentially in English that it's an inflammatory disease. So let's talk for a minute about testicles. So testicles are outside of a man's body. Does anybody know why? Testicles are outside of the man's body because they are in fact 1 degree less in temperature than the body. So if you want to say textbook temperature, which means nothing, but I'm just using it for the purpose of this dialogue, textbook temperature is 98.6 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So the testicles are 97.6 degrees. When the testicles get too hot, for example, if a man has what's called a varicocele, where the blood pools in the scrotum, what happens to the sperm? The sperm dies. And the man is diagnosed with low sperm count, status post-diagnosis of a varicocele. It's an inflammatory thing that's going on. It's killing the sperm.
Mm-hmm.
So in a woman with endometriosis, where the endometriosis was resected and she still can't get pregnant, she probably still has endometriosis. And those pro-inflammatory cytokines are probably circulating into the uterus itself. And this is another thing. Everybody in the world, I don't want to say that, I want to say many people think that endometriosis is a disease that is an ectopic disease. In other words, it's not in the uterus itself. It's where the tissue from the uterus goes to other places. This is true in part. In part. And I'm going to talk about the effects of the uterus in a minute, but I kind of am right now. So what happens is these pro-inflammatory cytokines find a way into the uterus, and what happens as a result of that is the uterus, just like the testicles, will be inflamed. There will be inflammation inside of the uterine cavity. So you must look at the uterus in the same way that one would look at an oven. If you're supposed to bake your salmon at 450, for 15 minutes, and you put the oven, I mean, I don't cook that much, so I don't even know if an oven goes up to 700 degrees, but let's just make believe it does. You put your oven to 700 degrees, and you put your fish in there for 15 minutes, you're going to have nothing but like coal.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be burnt, crisp, right? Because the oven's too hot. So in an endometriosis patient who doesn't get pregnant, it's because the uterus is too hot. In Western medical terms, we'd say there's an inflammatory process, manifesting in the uterine cavity. Yeah. And so now we'll back up for a second and talk about herbs. So herbs fit into different categories: nourish the blood, tonify the kidneys, benefit the spleen, move the qi, calm the shen, which means, make somebody who's very anxious relaxed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are anti-inflammatory herbs. Okay. So if you give a patient the right herbal formula, what you're doing, again, if you're doing what you want to do, that's the beauty of herbal medicine. It's just like Western medicine. Listen, some doctors will give a patient Lupron. The doctor across the street will give her Antagon. Some doctors will give a patient Clomid. The doctor across the street will give the patient Letrozole. Some doctors will give the patient Gonal F. Some patients will give the patient Gonal F and Menopur. It becomes the art of the science. So you would give this patient herbal medicine to support the immune function, and I'm not sure if it's more importantly, but equally importantly, to reduce. Remember before I was talking about reducing what's in excess? In this case, the inflammation is in excess. So you reduce the inflammation or the inflammatory milieu, the inflammatory environment, and that will create an environment where an embryo will be comfortable and where an embryo can implant and a placenta can develop and a baby can grow and generate, and a live birth may occur, and everything will be hunky-dory. So this is a great opportunity, if you will, to use herbs. Let's take one more kind of case, if I may.
Yes.
And then I'll shut up.
Yes.
So let's talk about the polycystic ovarian syndrome. It doesn't really matter. 50% of polycystic ovarian syndrome patients are morbidly obese, and 50% are normomorphic, meaning they're normal weight, height relationship. So why is it difficult for a woman with polycystic ovarian syndrome to get pregnant? Well, for those of you who don't know, it'll be a revelation. For those of you who do know, it's obvious. The PCOS patient is oligo-ovulatory, meaning she ovulates once in a while. And, let's talk about the textbook. A woman has a 28-day cycle and she ovulates on day 14. Now, most women don't fall into the textbook exactly, the definition exactly. But it's always something like that. Like, well, I ovulate on day 16, on cycle day 16, but, I have a 33-day cycle. So that means she's got at least a 14-day luteal phase. The luteal phase is the period of time from the minute of ovulation until the day of first bleed. That's called the luteal phase. So the PCOS patient doesn't ovulate regularly, so how does she know when to have intercourse for the purpose of getting pregnant? She doesn't.
Nope.
So she can use an ovulation predictor kit, but she'd have to use it literally 7 days a week forever and ever until, and then it says, oh, honey, I'm ovulating. But what it really means is I'm going to ovulate in 24 to 36 hours. And the best way to get pregnant is to start having intercourse 4 days before your presumed ovulation, because sperm stays alive in the female reproductive tract from between 2 to 4 days. But anyway, I digress. Let's go back to this PCOS patient. So forget the fact that she has a hard time getting pregnant. It's easy. Give her Clomid and have intercourse. Give her Clomid, let her have an IUI. Many times they'll get pregnant. Sometimes it doesn't work like that, but many times it does. But I have something to tell you that's even worse than that. What's worse than that is PCOS patients are twice as likely to miscarry as the non-PCOS population. Why? Because PCOS patients are hypoandrogenic. They have too much androgen. Now, women do have androgen and men do have estrogen. But men have more testosterone than estrogen, and women have more estrogen than androgen or testosterone. And so what happens is, as a result of having too much androgen in the follicle, which is where the androgen comes from two places. It comes from the, I forgot the other, it's just eluding me, but it comes from the ovaries, certainly, from the theca cells in the ovaries. It's driving me nuts now that I can't remember. It's just like a slip of the tongue, but I can't remember the.
It's gonna pop up as we.
It sits on top of the kidneys. These. Anyway, but anyway, the ovaries have too much androgen, and this androgen in the follicles gets converted into estrogen, which is a normal thing. Mm-hmm. But when a woman has so much androgen, it serves as an anti-estrogen, and therefore she may not even have reduced estrogen. She may have the proper amount of estrogen, but it's kind of like you can bring 100 tons of cleaning fluid, but it doesn't mean you can clean everybody's clothes in the whole world. I don't know if my analogy is good. The androgen is causing poor egg quality. Let's leave it at that. And as a result of that, she gets pregnant and she miscarries because the embryos become aneuploidic, meaning chromosomally abnormal. And so what happens when you use herbs in this patient is you're not going to take the patient and totally normalize their hormonal structure. But what you can do is by strongly increasing hemodynamics, blood flow to the ovaries, you're probably, and I'm saying probably because I don't know, I don't fully understand the mechanism of action in this particular case. And that's a thing that Americans hate to hear. And I'm an American, and I understand why we hate to hear that, because in Western science, we know that if you take this medicine, it does that, and as a result of that, this happens. Sometimes in Chinese medicine, we don't know that. But we know that when you give a PCOS patient who's, well, most of the time, 99% of the time, they're hypoandrogenemic, it will regulate the androgen and estrogen quantity in the follicles, in the theca cells, in the granulosa cells, and it causes improved egg quality. And as a result, this woman, I'm not going to say she's going to get pregnant and have a baby because I never want to be presumptuous, but I will say that as a result, she has a far improved chance of getting pregnant and staying pregnant than she would have without the herbs. And by the way, there is no Western medicine that can do this. There is no Western medicine that can improve sperm quality. There's no Western medicine that can improve sperm count unless the sperm count comes from a deficiency of testosterone, in which case the patient is given FSH, the male patient, and that increases LH, and LH facilitates the development of testosterone, et cetera, et cetera. But there are many men that have poor sperm count, low sperm count, poor morphology, poor motility, low volume, sperm DNA fragmentation, and there's nothing that Western medicine can do about it because it's idiopathic. It's like, we don't know why it's happening. There's no known cause. We can't treat it. Chinese medicine treats it very effectively. How can I say that? Because I've been doing this for 23 years, and I've treated hundreds of men and thousands of women with good outcomes. And again, I want to say to the listening audience, I have bad outcomes as well. I am not somebody that can fix and cure every patient, but either is your reproductive endocrinologist.
Right.
Your endocrinologist can have 1,000 cases a year. I'm just making that number up. He or she can have 1,000 cases a year, and out of that 1,000 cases, 350 to 400 may get pregnant, and out of the 350 to 400 that may get pregnant, maybe 50% of them won't miscarry. So even though Western reproductive medicine has produced more than 4 million live births, the question is, how many transfers did it take to produce 4 million live births? Was it 30 million embryos transferred to produce 4 million live births? I don't have the answer to that. But what I do know is that there were certainly more transfers done than babies born. And so my message to the audience is to utilize everything that has a history and that has proof of efficaciousness. And we know that herbs and acupuncture are effective because at this time, during this day and age, on September 15th, 2020, there are an abundance of Western medical research and studies that attest to the benefit and efficacy of Chinese medicine in the context of fertility enhancement.
Well, finally, because I walked into my RE's office. I've mentioned this before on the podcast. My first RE, I walked into his office after our first failure, the what the fuck appointment. And on his door was an article about why acupuncture hinders fertility. And I was so discouraged. But I'd love that you're talking about Western medicine. Can you talk about, because that was another thing that I got from my RE's office was...
Oh, sorry. Time out.
Yes.
The adrenal glands.
There it is. I knew it was going to come. Thank you. And
androgen comes from the adrenal glands, and androgen comes from the ovaries. Now, I can sleep tonight.
Done. You knew that was
Okay,
good.
I apologize.
Yes. No,
Sorry.
no worries. One of
So
the
we talk about Western medicine, right?
Yeah, one of the things that um, I got from my RE, and I was just sort of doe-eyed going through this fertility world, completely oblivious and not educated and not knowing what I was, just following doctor's orders. He was adamant that any kind of traditional Chinese medicine and herbs and things was a huge hindrance to my fertility. And you work in conjunction with Western medicine. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that for a little bit.
Absolutely, 100%. So I want to say this, that all the reproductive endocrinologists, not all, but most of the reproductive endocrinologists that I know, and I know several of them personally, and some of them we're good friends.
Mm-hmm.
We go to dinner, we hang out. They're very smart, good, decent, wonderful, caring, loving, good, kind people. They don't want patients taking herbs when the patients are taking gonadotropins. And gonadotropins, for those of you who don't know, are just, suffice it to say that it's Western medicine to help you get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they don't is because they're good human beings. And I'm going to explain that. It sounds kind of contrary to what one would think I was going to say. But the reason that reproductive endocrinologists don't want their patients to take herbs is because the doctor thinks, and this is the way they should think, they're trying to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
They think that herbs can either attenuate or potentiate the Western medicine. So what I mean by that is, if you take 100 milligrams of Clomid, I'm just making this up. If you take 100 milligrams of Clomid and then you take herbs, the doctor feels that it could have an effect on the Clomid where it really makes it like analogous to taking 150 milligrams of Clomid, and the patient can get severe ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome.
Okay.
Or the opposite. Maybe if you take the herbs, it'll make the 100 milligrams of Clomid act as if it's only 50 milligrams of Clomid. So the doctors don't want their patients to take herbs because of this. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, I want to say that that over the years, I have had the opportunity with the nod, with the permission of the reproductive endocrinologist, to use the herbs while the patients are on gonadotropins. And the patient either conceived or didn't. But there's no evidence to indicate, there's no real evidence to indicate that herbs are really going to, in fact, potentiate or attenuate the effect of a medicine. So what I want the listeners to know is that the reproductive endocrinologists are doing their best to serve you and to protect you in the way that they were best trained. Mm-hmm. And what I now want to say with complete respect and complete honor and complete humility, the reproductive endocrinologists are wrong. And the reason I can say they're wrong is because I have had the personal experience of treating patients who were in fact on gonadotropins, injecting every day, and taking herbs and got pregnant and had children. So there's never been a downside. And there's one tiny little thing else I want to say about this.
Yeah.
Let's take a pretend case. But the pretend case is totally representative of millions of cases throughout the world. Mm-hmm. Here's a woman, forget what the pathology is. She can't get pregnant. So she does 4, 5 IUIs, doesn't get pregnant. She does 4 IVFs, doesn't get pregnant. So now her doctor said she doesn't want the patient to take the herbs. So okay, let's go backwards. First time I'm seeing the patient, she's in my office today for a consult, and I say, "Listen, do you want to think about herbs? Are you interested in talking about herbs?" And she'll say, "Yeah, I want to take the herbs, but my doctor doesn't want me to take the herbs when I'm on the gonadotropins." And this is what I say to the patient: "Nancy, I fully understand. I fully support your doctor's decision. Let's just do acupuncture. No worries, no problem. It's all good. It's fine." Okay? We're going to leave that over here.
Yep.
Now we're going to go back to this case. 4 failed IUIs and 4 failed IVFs. I won't even wait that long. Let's take it back a step. 3 failed IUIs and 2 failed IVFs. I'm going to say to the patient, if you don't take herbs, you're making a huge mistake, and I don't care what your doctor says. You've already given your doctor $50,000, and you're not even miscarrying. You're just not even getting pregnant.
Yeah.
So I think it was Albert Einstein said, if you do the same thing over and over again and you expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So I will then step in and become a little more strong in my personality. Not obnoxiously strong, but just say, listen, it's not happening for you. Why don't you try something different? I'm not telling you to put a purple crystal in your belly button. I'm not telling you to get a liver transplant surgery.
Although that might be helpful.
It might be helpful, right? I'm not telling you to do something insane. I'm telling you to try something that's been used on hundreds of millions of people for 3,000 years and is still being used today. So I give the patient the out in the beginning out of respect for the doctor and also respect for the patient, because I don't want the patient in the middle. I don't know what I should do. Should I listen to my doctor or should I listen to Mike Berkley? I don't know what to do. I don't want to stress her out. So I'm like, no worries, don't take the herbs. But after a while, I'll say, listen, you want to do another 6 IVFs? You want to do a donor egg? Do you want to get to donor egg? You might get to donor egg, but let's intercede with a different type of intervention in conjunction with your IVF, with your own eggs, and see if we can make this thing happen. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Many times it does.
But this is doing something different to prevent insanity.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
This
It's
is
not
already
doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. This is already insane enough. But I totally respect that you keep the patient out of the middle and just say, let's honor that.
Totally.
Yeah.
By the time I tell the patient, listen, you should really take herbs, it's very funny because at that time the patient is like, listen, I really want to take herbs. Yeah. I don't care. So it's like.
I can see that happening. That would have been me on IVF number 2. I'm like, let's just take the freaking herbs. All right.
Yeah, and listen, I just want to state for the record that I am not at all saying herbs and acupuncture are the miracle that you should reach for and you're going to get pregnant and have 32 babies.
Sure.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this stuff works. And so give it a chance. Listen, if you went to war, would you rather go to war with like one of your friends or 5,000 of your friends that know how to engage in war? You'd probably want to go with 5,000 of your friends. So use more of what's good. Use more of what's better. Use more of what's effective.
Yes, without without
causing harm.
Yeah, without I write about in my book about all the things that the internet told me to do, right? Like I have to make all these checklists. Okay, now I did this, now I did that, and now I'll get pregnant. So I want to prevent folks from going down that rabbit hole, but really looking at things that feel right to you and looking up the efficacy of things. And I mean, even back then, my fertility treatments were back in, 10 years ago. And even then there was plenty of research to show that acupuncture was useful. And
this is the way I feel. I think 99.999% of reproductive endocrinologists are in the right place when they tell their patients not to take herbs. They just don't know. And I'm not going to hold that against them. They know a million times more about reproductive medicine than I'll ever know.
Well, I don't know about that.
They certainly know a lot. They know a lot. They're brilliant doctors. Right? But there are some doctors and there are some human beings, forget that they're doctors. There are some human beings that have to be right and they have to claim the credit. So if a reproductive endocrinologist keeps the patient off of acupuncture and off of drugs and the patient gets pregnant, so the doctor can say, great, it was me that got you pregnant, which is probably true. But my position is, doctor, you got the patient pregnant, but if you look at your whole career, how many hundreds or thousands of patients didn't get pregnant? That might have gotten pregnant if you let them participate in an additive type of medicinal protocol.
Right, complementary, not meant to undermine you, but
right. We're not replacing the doctor.
No, especially if it feels right to the person, receiving the treatment. Obviously I'm a mental health person, so I'm like, what feels right to you? Use your emotions, use your intuition, right? So like some people are not drawn to Eastern medicine. They're not drawn to acupuncture. They're not drawn to herbs. That's fine.
Yeah, and listen, there's a little exception to that. I take exception to it a little bit. And what I mean is this. I actually knew this woman. She was a patient of mine. And I haven't, seen her in 100 years, but I'm going to tell you something. And she was a lovely, delightful woman. And what am I talking about right now? I'm talking about doing what feels right to you. That's not necessarily always the best avenue to take.
Okay,
it's partially the right way to take. This woman, let me tell you what she did. She had a lot of money and nothing was working for her. So she heard about some guy who lives on a mountaintop in Brazil, and he will recite for $3,500. He will recite some incantations in front of you, and you will get pregnant. So she went to Brazil and went to the mountaintop and gave him $3,500, and he said a bunch of things in Portuguese, and it was all utter BS. Now, he might have thought that it wasn't BS, but it is, because saying stuff to people isn't going to get them pregnant. But that's what she felt was the right thing to do. But even though she felt it was the right thing to do, it was probably a waste of time. So I would say do what you think is important and the right thing to do, but make sure that there's supporting evidence behind it.
Right. Well, and also it sounds to me things like that come from a place of desperation and not true intuition.
I would agree with you.
Intuition is a calm, sensible place.
Yeah, that resonates with me. That's right.
Yeah, that sounds more like desperation, which is not guidance. It's not true.
Right,
guidance.
indeed. You're right.
But yeah.
Well, if I were to say one more thing about the herbs.
Yes.
This is a very interesting, important thing for the listeners to take hold of. So there were some herbs years ago, they were pills, and they were used for anxiety. That was the purpose of these pills. So if you had a patient who was very anxious, you would give the patient a bottle of these pills, and you'd say, take 8 of these pills twice a day. And the patients were taking these pills, and they were coming back, and they were saying, this is the most remarkable thing that I've ever had in my life. I take these pills, and literally in like 25 minutes, I feel like I've meditated for 6 hours. What is going on? And the acupuncturist is like, well, I told you, they're very powerful herbs. Well, what happened was there was Valium in these pills.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Meant to be herbal pills?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, what's the difference? You put a little Valium in the pill and you calm people down, you'll sell millions of these bottles, right? So one of the problems with the pills, there were 2 problems, which is, number 1, the dosage is subclinical, but number 2, you truly, truly, truly don't know what's in the pills.
Yeah.
When you take raw herbs, you're literally looking at the herbs. You can pick up a twig or a rock or a plant-based product and look at it. There's no Valium on it. There's nothing in it. It is what it is. If you see a chicken walking across the street, it can't possibly be misconstrued as a cow. So, it is. When you use raw herbs, you're literally seeing what you get.
Yes.
And so there's no danger that it's contaminated with anything, and so it's a safety consideration.
Yeah, and we could talk. I mean, like I want to pick your brain even more, but gosh, we're out of time. I want to talk about how you prepare them and how you like all that stuff. But maybe next time, I would love to talk next time, because this is like fascinating stuff, and I wish that and I was in New Jersey at the time. I could have like gone across the river and visited you. Boy, that would have been so helpful.
Well, I hope that things worked out for you.
Oh, 1,000 million fold. Yes,
good.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yes, folks who are my listeners know that. Yes.
I'm very, very happy to hear that. And I want to just say a couple of quick things, which is, first of all, thank you again ever so much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun for me. Thank you. You're too kind. It's fun. I get to help educate some people, and I so enjoy what I do. I so love what I do, and this is just a wonderful opportunity for me. And you've been a lovely hostess, and your questions were well versed and intelligently composed, and it was a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
that. Yeah, I think that this is going to be really helpful for folks who are listening, and all of your contact information will be on the show notes. And I'm just so happy to be able to put this information out there. And we just scratched the surface. So really, I would love to, actually, if folks want to, this will be on YouTube. If folks want to comment or email me directly or email Mike directly, you can ask if you want more questions answered, and
Yes,
we'll
please.
have Mike back and ask more questions and delve even deeper. I
You're
love this
very
stuff.
kind.
So
Thank
good.
you so very much, and I wish you the absolute best in your practice and in your life.
Likewise to
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you. See
much.
you again, okay?
Yes, you bet.
All the best. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.